The stellar administrative complex on Nexus 7 represented the pinnacle of galactic bureaucratic achievement, which was rather like being the tallest building in a city of architectural mediocrity. Spanning 14 orbital platforms connected by quantum-stabilized bridges, the complex housed the Intergalactic Oversight Committee, an organization so committed to proper procedure that they required forms to request forms. Director Kythara, whose species had evolved 12 tentacles specifically for simultaneous document handling, was experiencing what could charitably be called an administrative migraine. The morning's agenda included 73 routine compliance reports, 41 trade dispute mediations, and one particularly irritating item that had been lingering in the pending files for approximately 2 centuries: the Earth situation. Agenda Item 847-B, announced Chief Analyst Omnira, her cybernetic enhancements flickering with barely contained frustration. Sol System Integration Status Report. Current classification: Chronic Non-Compliance. War Minister Draxton, whose armored carapace had been polished to reflect his species' love of ceremonial intimidation, shifted in his gravity-adjusted chair. 200 years of diplomatic outreach, 200 years of increasingly generous integration packages, 200 years of humans responding with what our linguistic specialists classify as creative variations on the theme of no. The Earth situation had become something of a legend among galactic administrators. Humanity represented the only species in recorded history to maintain complete independence, while simultaneously ignoring every standard diplomatic protocol, trade agreement, and cultural exchange program offered by the Confederation. They paid no taxes, attended no meetings, and had somehow managed to turn their entire solar system into a bureaucratic black hole, where normal procedures went to die. Their latest response to our mutual cooperation initiative, Kythara reported, consulting a holographic display with 3 of her tentacles, while the remaining 9 sorted through complaint forms, was a 17-second video message featuring what appears to be a domesticated Earth creature making repetitive vocalizations. The technical term is cat video, Omnira clarified, her enhanced cognitive processors struggling with the concept. Specifically, a cat refusing to engage with a mechanical toy designed to simulate prey animals. "How wonderfully metaphorical," Draxton observed, his voice carrying the rumbling undertone of someone who'd spent centuries perfecting the art of intimidation. "They're sending us videos of their pets ignoring things." The irony wasn't lost on anyone present, which was impressive given that the average galactic administrator had roughly the same sense of humor as a tax audit. Humanity's consistent ability to thumb their collective nose at the galaxy's most sophisticated civilization had become a source of both professional embarrassment and morbid fascination. "The economic implications are staggering," continued Omniera, her cybernetic components generating charts that would have given lesser species seizures. "Zero participation in galactic trade networks, zero contribution to the Confederation's military defense fund, zero engagement with our cultural enrichment programs. And yet," Kythara added with the tone of someone discovering that their pet goldfish had developed sentience and filed a lawsuit, "their military capabilities appear to have increased by approximately 400% over the past standard decade." This was the part that had been keeping galactic analysts awake at night, assuming they slept. Earth's technological development followed patterns that defied every known model of civilizational advancement. They'd achieved faster than light travel through what appeared to be sheer bloody-mindedness, developed energy weapons by asking the question, "What if we made lightning angry?" and somehow convinced the laws of physics to cooperate with engineering projects that should have been theoretically impossible. Motion to reclassify the Earth situation from administrative non-compliance to active threat assessment, Draxton announced, his armor systems automatically adjusting to a more aggressive configuration. "If they won't join galactic civilization voluntarily, perhaps it's time to demonstrate the benefits of membership through more direct means." The vote was unanimous, which in a committee representing 49 species was roughly as common as finding a Venetian who didn't complain about the atmospheric pressure. Operation Final Notice received formal authorization at 11:47 Galactic Standard Time, with implementation scheduled for the following solar cycle. The War Planning Division aboard Dreadnought Supremacy operated with the kind of precision that would have impressed a Swiss watchmaker, assuming Swiss watchmakers had access to quantum computing and enough firepower to sterilize planets. Fleet Marshal Vorthan, whose species had evolved from apex predators and never quite gotten over their enthusiasm for hunting, reviewed the tactical assessment with professional satisfaction. The human military consists of 1,247 vessels, he reported to his assembled staff officers, his voice carrying the confident tone of someone who'd spent his career making smaller numbers surrender to larger ones. Their combined tonnage equals approximately 12% of our advanced scout fleet. The Armada Totalitas represented the accumulated military might of 15 stellar nations, 3,200 warships ranging from nimble corvette-class interceptors to massive extinction-class dreadnoughts. The fleet's firepower could theoretically crack a planet's crust or, if they were feeling particularly artistic, rearrange continental drift patterns. Their defensive installations, continued his chief tactical officer, consist primarily of orbital manufacturing platforms and asteroid mining facilities. No military-grade fortifications, no quantum entanglement barriers, no gravitational weapons arrays. It's almost quaint. The strategic analysis painted a picture of inevitable victory that was so one-sided it bordered on the absurd. Earth's military doctrine appeared to have been developed by someone with an unhealthy obsession with kinetic weapons and explosive solutions to complex problems. Their largest warship massed roughly 200,000 tons, which made it smaller than most Confederation supply vessels. Conservative estimates suggest the operation will conclude within 96 hours, Vorthan announced, his predatory instincts practically purring with anticipation. Most of that time will be devoted to processing surrender documents and establishing provisional government structures. The betting pools had already opened across the fleet, with odds makers offering generous rates on various aspects of the impending victory. The most popular bets involved the precise duration of human resistance, with estimates ranging from 14 hours to 3 standard days. The more creative gambling involved guessing which human city would surrender first, what excuses they'd offer for their inevitable defeat, and whether they'd attempt to negotiate terms or simply collapse into panicked chaos. The humans will likely attempt some form of diplomatic solution, observed the fleet's chief analyst, a cybernetic intelligence that had been calculating military probabilities since before Earth's sun had finished forming. Their historical records indicate a preference for negotiation, even when facing overwhelming odds. Let them negotiate, Vorthan replied, his species equivalent of a smile revealing teeth that had been designed by evolution specifically for ending arguments. We'll listen to their proposals, with the patience and dignity appropriate to a superior military force. Then we'll politely explain why those proposals are irrelevant. The 96-hour ultimatum broadcast went out precisely on schedule, transmitted through quantum-encrypted channels to every communications array in the Sol system. The message was a masterpiece of diplomatic courtesy, wrapped around an unmistakable threat. Surrender unconditionally, accept Confederation oversight and prepare for immediate integration into galactic civilization. The alternative was left to the imagination, though the presence of 3,200 warships currently darkening Earth's sky provided helpful context clues. Humanity's response arrived within 4 hours, which was actually quite prompt by galactic standards. The message was professionally formatted, properly encrypted and addressed to the distinguished representatives of the galactic community currently visiting our solar system. It read in its entirety, "Thank you for your message. We'll address your concerns after morning coffee. Please stand by." Fleet Marshal Vorthan stared at the message for several minutes, his predatory instincts experiencing something that might have been confusion if apex predators were capable of such emotions. After morning coffee? Perhaps it's a cultural ritual, suggested his communications officer. Many species have ceremonial preparations before significant events. Or, Vorthan replied slowly, they're not taking us seriously. The humans, as it turned out, were taking the situation quite seriously indeed. They were just taking it seriously in the way that someone might take a particularly challenging crossword puzzle, or a stubborn jar of pickles. The challenge wasn't whether they could solve the problem, but rather how efficiently they could do so without disrupting their regularly scheduled activities. Admiral Phoenix Hawthorne, whose military career had been built on the radical concept that warfare should be both effective and convenient, reviewed the tactical situation over her second cup of coffee. The alien fleet was certainly impressive, in the way that expensive jewelry was impressive, lots of sparkle, considerable cost, and ultimately more decorative than functional. Assessment report, she requested from her tactical staff, a collection of individuals who'd spent their careers asking the question, what if we made it explode more efficiently? Standard alien battle doctrine, reported Commander Vincent Cross, his tone carrying the mild interest of someone examining a particularly well-organized filing system. Overwhelming numerical superiority, technological advantage, and the apparent assumption that we'll be impressed by their light show. Dr. Cassandra Blackwood, whose scientific career had been dedicated to the proposition that physics was more like a guideline than a rule, reviewed the technical specifications with professional curiosity. Their energy weapons operate on standard quantum field manipulation principles. Their shields use gravitational distortion. Their propulsion systems rely on controlled spatial folding. All very impressive, Hawthorne observed, and all very predictable. The human approach to warfare had evolved from a fundamental philosophical principle. If something needed to be destroyed, there was probably a more interesting way to destroy it than simply shooting at it. Their military doctrine was built around the concept of applied engineering spite, the art of solving problems through creative application of whatever happened to be lying around. Recommended response, Hawthorne asked. Project Household Efficiency, Cross replied, consulting a tablet that looked suspiciously like it had been assembled from spare parts. Estimated completion time 37 minutes including coffee break. Excellent, Hawthorne said, checking her watch. That should wrap up nicely before lunch. The Battle of Lunar's Shadow began at 10:23 a.m. Earth Standard Time, when the first wave of Confederation forces encountered what they had classified as minimal lunar defenses. The encounter lasted approximately 4 minutes and resulted in what the humans cheerfully described as successful field testing of repurposed mining equipment. Fleet Marshal Vorthon received the first casualty reports with the kind of bewildered outrage typically reserved for discovering that one's pet had learned to speak and was now demanding better accommodations. They're using construction equipment? Asteroid mining charges, sir, reported his tactical officer, his voice carrying the tone of someone who'd just watched the laws of physics file a formal complaint. Converted cargo haulers, industrial fabrication units modified for rapid projectile deployment. They're shooting rocks at us, Vorthon clarified, his predatory instinct struggling with the concept of prey that fought back using gardening tools. Very fast rocks, sir, with explosive cores, and what appears to be highly aggressive targeting algorithms. The human military had approached the invasion with the same enthusiasm they applied to home renovation projects. Lots of improvisation, creative use of available materials, and a cheerful disregard for safety regulations. Their orbital manufacturing platforms had been converted into kinetic weapons arrays, their asteroid mining equipment had been repurposed for long-range bombardment, and their cargo handling systems had been modified to launch what could only be described as weaponized recycling. They're treating our invasion fleet, reported the fleet's chief analyst, his cybernetic components flickering with what might have been electronic embarrassment, like a particularly challenging waste disposal problem. The systematic dismantling of the Armada Totalitas proceeded with the kind of efficient precision that would have impressed a professional demolition crew. Human vessels swarmed through the alien formation, their crews apparently viewing the engagement as an opportunity to test various theories about applied physics and creative problem-solving. Sir, reported a communications officer, his voice carrying the shell-shocked tone of someone who'd just witnessed the impossible become routine, the humans are requesting a brief pause in hostilities. Surrender? Vorthon asked hopefully. No, sir. They're asking if we could please maintain our current positions for the next 20 minutes. They're breaking for coffee. The coffee break incident, as it would later be known in galactic military history, represented the point at which the Confederation's tactical doctrine encountered the immovable object of human scheduling priorities. The humans had literally paused their defense of their home system to enjoy a hot beverage, complete with what appeared to be pastries and casual conversation. They're having a staff meeting, reported the fleet surveillance officer, on the bridge of their flagship, with donuts. At 10:47, i.e. Earth Standard Time, the humans resumed hostilities with the kind of professional efficiency that suggested they'd spent their coffee break discussing improved techniques for alien fleet disassembly. The second phase of the engagement introduced what Dr. Blackwood had casually described as some things I've been working on. These included gravity manipulators that could turn enemy vessels inside out, quantum disruptors that made matter question its own existence, and a device that projected what appeared to be extremely detailed technical specifications for impossible engineering projects directly into enemy navigation systems. "They're not fighting a war," observed the fleet's chief analyst, his electronic consciousness struggling with concepts that defied standard military classification. "They're conducting a large-scale engineering demonstration." The human counteroffensive reached the first Confederation home systems at 11:00 a.m. Earth Standard Time, exactly 37 minutes after the initial engagement. The speed of their advance defied every principle of strategic warfare, mainly because they weren't advancing so much as teleporting, using a transportation method that appeared to involve folding space-time like origami. "Emergency session," Director Kitara announced, her 12 tentacles frantically sorting through evacuation procedures, while her communication systems broadcasted surrender terms to anyone who might be listening. "We need to discuss new administrative protocols." The emergency session convened in the Stellar Administrative Complex's most secure bunker, a facility that had been designed to withstand everything from stellar collapse to aggressive auditing. The assembled leadership of galactic civilization faced the novel experience of discovering that their carefully constructed bureaucracy had just been reorganized by a species that treated impossible odds as scheduling inconveniences. "The humans," reported War Minister Draxton, his armor systems displaying stress patterns that suggested he'd been having second thoughts about his career choices, "have submitted a proposal for new management structures." The proposal, delivered by the human diplomatic team with the casual efficiency of someone updating office procedures, was surprisingly reasonable. Earth would accept membership in the Confederation, but only as the senior administrative partner. The existing bureaucratic structure would remain largely intact, with the minor adjustment that all major decisions would require human approval and efficiency assessments. "You're offering us a chance to maintain our positions," observed Chief Analyst Omnira, her cybernetic enhancement struggling with the concept of voluntary subordination to a species that had been classified as administratively non-compliant. Admiral Phoenix Hawthorne, who had arrived at the negotiation with what appeared to be take-out coffee and a tablet full of scheduling applications, shrugged, with the casual indifference of someone who'd just solved a particularly annoying logistics problem. "We figured you'd prefer it to the alternative." "Which is?" "We handle galactic administration ourselves, but with less paperwork and more efficient meeting schedules." The new administrative order was established by 12:30 p.m. Earth Standard Time, making the entire conflict roughly as long as a typical lunch break. The humans, for their part, treated their accidental conquest of galactic civilization as a moderate improvement in their filing system, comparable to upgrading office software or implementing better organizational procedures. "The irony," observed Director Kithara during the post-conflict analysis, "is that we spent 2 centuries trying to convince them to join our administrative system. Now we're spending our time trying to convince them not to reorganize it for efficiency." The betting pools, meanwhile, had undergone significant restructuring. The original question, "How long would humanity resist?" had been replaced by more pressing concerns. How long would existing governmental structures survive human administrative optimization? And whether the universe was prepared for the kind of efficiency improvements that a species capable of ending wars before lunch might implement. Current odds favored complete galactic reorganization within 6 months, assuming the humans didn't discover any new hobbies that required universe-scale infrastructure modifications. As Director Kithara noted in her final report to the remaining Confederation leadership, "We predicted human defeat based on their apparent technological limitations and administrative non-compliance. We failed to account for their most dangerous characteristic, the ability to treat existential threats as routine maintenance issues." The universe, it seemed, had developed a rather sophisticated sense of humor. The joke, unfortunately, was on everyone who'd assumed that superior technology and overwhelming numbers were adequate substitutes for creative problem-solving and efficient time management. In the aftermath, the war that was supposed to last 4 days ended before lunch. The civilization that was supposed to be conquered became the administrator, and the species that was supposed to be primitive taught the galaxy a lesson in the dangers of underestimating beings who viewed impossible situations as opportunities for process improvement. The humans, meanwhile, returned to their regularly scheduled activities, with the minor addition of managing galactic affairs between coffee breaks, because apparently running a galaxy was just another administrative task, somewhere between optimized supply chain logistics and remember to water the office plants. The universe, as it turned out, did indeed have a rather sophisticated sense of humor. The punchline was that everyone else had been taking themselves far too seriously.